Welcome into the Gridiron Grind College Football Podcast. This week, it's Creta 3, Jimmy G. Jimmy, the horns were off last week, but Arkansas, I mean, what more can you say? Another week, didn't win, but they know how to cover.
Covered 19 and a half. I said, I thought going into the season, especially after we watched Alabama, not look like themselves early, I said, okay, this is going to be our year. If there's any year to beat Alabama, it's going to be this year. Of course, it still wasn't this year. I'm pretty sure we've said it before on the show, but Arkansas has not beat Nick Saban since he's been at Alabama.
Yeah.
It's that, when people would go, when I would tell people, I'm really frustrated that we can't beat A&M, after 9-10 years in a row. They'd go, what about Alabama? I go, well, one, everybody loses to Alabama, but two, we owned A&M until they joined the SEC. Alabama, we've never beat Saban since he got there. Mike Shula had them on probation, and they were still a really good team. I mean, Roman Harper was on that team. I think D'Amico Ryans maybe was on that team. Like, Saban inherited not a national championship caliber team, but he had a pretty good foundation to work with. We just hadn't beat him. And so this year I said, it's going to be our year. And
Well,
I said, we're going to cover at least. And we did.
He's the GOAT for a reason. Two teams in the SEC West haven't beat him, and he's been there since 2007 was his first year at Alabama. Arkansas and Mississippi State are the two that haven't beat him. And Ole Miss has beat him twice. LSU's beat him a handful of times. A&M's beat him twice. So, I mean, it's tough to get.
Yeah.
Tough to get. They look vulnerable this year. So we'll see. A lot can be unfolded in the SEC. A lot to talk about. We got actually a question about the SEC West and Georgia. They squeaked by Vanderbilt last week. Didn't look great. Had a big injury. One of our questions of the week is about that. But the game of the week last week, Washington and Oregon, what a game. Two top 10 teams, and they both looked it. Oregon coach Dan Lanning, he's our age, head coach at Oregon, super aggressive. They lost by 3. He went for it on fourth down 4 times. I think it was 0 for 4, and 2 of those were in the red zone. If he just takes a field goal half the time, they end up winning that game. Of course, he kicked the field goal at the end, and the guy missed a 42-yarder. But, we've had a good string of high-profile games, like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. Like Notre Dame, Ohio State kicked it off, and you had like Red River, Oklahoma beating Texas, and then last week another one, Oregon, Washington. I think those 2 teams, best 2 in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I agree. And Michael Penix Jr. coming over from Indiana, he was dynamic at Indiana. It seems like he's upped himself since he's arrived at Washington. Last year, leading the country in passing. This year, doing the same thing, I believe, last time I looked. And so, I mean, the guy is phenomenal. And golly, like you said, Oregon, no slouch on the other side of the ball. And what a game that was. Yeah, I don't know, and of course, it's kind of like Sonny Dykes last year with Max Duggan in that game. Well, do you give him the chance to get it, put it in his hands, or, what are you, the guy that gets you down the field there to chance to win at the end? I don't know what coaches. I'm not a coach, but like you said, I'm going, okay, we're going for it on fourth down in the red zone. I guess after the first couple times you don't get it, I'm just sitting here going, well, just kick it. But is the kicker not warming up well? Was he not have a good week of practice? And so you just never know. But I think it was pretty puzzling to me that he didn't try to kick it at least once.
Yeah, the one I disagreed with was right before half. Just kick the field goal and go and get the points before half. Yes, you still would have been losing. I think they were down 4, and that's what he said. He said he wanted to be aggressive. We said we came here to win, but at the same time, kicking a field goal and being down 1 there at half. I mean, yeah, you're losing by 1 point, but it's basically tied. I just think I'd rather have a little bit of momentum than no momentum, or giving Washington momentum at the half by getting that stop. I think that's the one. And then, of course, he goes for the touchdown. They were ahead by, was it 4? They were ahead by 4, and he goes for it on fourth down, doesn't get it. gives Washington the ball. Washington scores in 3-4 plays. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, there's a minute 20 left. You left Oregon too much time because that put Washington up by 3. Of course, Oregon drives down. I don't know if they had any timeouts left. Maybe had one, but got a 42-yarder, and kid just he missed it. It was a heck of a game. And, this playoff picture, it's cloudy, man. We another pretty good slate of games, but I counted. I mean, there's at least 15 teams that still have a legitimate chance of making the playoff. And this is I don't know if you could many years you could say we're halfway point and there's still legitimately, I don't know who the best team in the country is. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I could probably give you a good guess who the top 5 teams are, but I have no idea. If you said, well, one of these 2 teams, usually is what we end up saying, one of these 2 teams are going to win the national championship. Wouldn't feel comfortable. I mean, you could just pick 2 of the 15. And I think any of those 15 could win it.
Yeah, that's, something we talked about off air was talking about, betting and the NFL versus college this year. And like you and I said, seems to be a lot more parity in college than there is the NFL.
Yeah.
And that just backs up the point you made is you take any of those top, I mean, you just narrow it down to 10. You pick the 10 best teams in college football and go, I'm going to put money on them, gentleman's bet, whatever you want to do, to win the national championship, and nobody's going to call you crazy. It's not like you're going, yeah, I think, West Virginia or, Rutgers or somebody's going to win the national championship. Oh, you're crazy. But you're going, hey, I think Penn State can win the national championship. Here's why. People are, I could see it. They have a legit chance. So, yeah, it's an exciting year and another exciting weekend. And something I'm sure we'll talk about. You talk about the kicker missing there for Oregon. Yeah, it was a bad weekend for West Coast kickers, as the 49ers well know.
Yeah.
We'll get into that on the NFL pod, but yeah, bad weekend for West Coast kickers.
You just mentioned Penn State. Let's get into the slate of games this week. Penn State will get their first test of the season as they travel to Ohio State, and I'm having to look this up. When was the last time? So we got number 7 Penn State undefeated, at number 3 Ohio State also undefeated. Ohio State favored by 4. Of course, Ohio State has had the tough game against Notre Dame where they won on the road. That was a true test. Also, they played Maryland. So this reminds me of the Texas-Oklahoma game from 2 weeks ago. Texas had faced 2 top 25 teams, beaten them both. Oklahoma had not played a top 25 team and hadn't really played anybody. And you can't, all the thing that proves is you don't know how good at that point. You didn't know how good Oklahoma was. They just haven't played it. That doesn't mean because they haven't played anybody, doesn't mean they're not as good. It just means we know less about them because their competition hasn't been as good. I think that's the same thing with this game. We know more about Ohio State because of their win over Notre Dame and their win over Maryland. We don't know near as much about Penn State. Doesn't mean Penn State's not better. We just don't know enough. And so what do you think? Penn State at Ohio State?
I've got a bet on this one when we get down to it. I'm excited for this game. This one's probably my favorite of the weekend. I also like USC Utah this weekend as well. And Hogs have Mississippi State. It's a battle of a not good team versus a better but still not good team. So I'm pretty excited about this one because, like you said, I want to see how good Penn State is.
Yeah.
I mean, they're putting it 2 teams, and so is Ohio State. And I personally feel this might tip off what direction I'm going, but I personally feel Ohio State is lucky to be undefeated. They're lucky Notre Dame just forgot 11. It requires 11
True.
On the field. Otherwise, I believe Ohio State would have lost that game, but they didn't, and they're undefeated. So,
do you know when the last time Penn State? I had to look this up. It's more recent than I thought. But do you know when the last time Penn State beat Ohio State?
Was it with like Saquon or McSorley?
It could have been. It was 2016. I didn't even know. I didn't think James Franklin had ever beaten him. He has. He beat him in 2016. I don't really remember that game, but James Franklin is 1-8 against Ohio State. The lone win coming in 2016 in Happy Valley and Penn State. So he's
Tressel still there, or Urban Meyer?
16 would have been. That would have been Urban. I know Ohio State won it in 14, and then I know he was there in 15. I can't remember.
Either Ryan Day's, that might have been Ryan Day's first year, because remember, he was on the hot seat like right out of the gate at Ohio State. So yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that being the end of Meyer or the beginning of Day. So man, yeah.
So yeah, Penn State has not traditionally not been very successful against Ohio State. Let's see.
And it's 11 a.m. kickoff.
It's 11 a.m. Big noon kickoff.
Which I mean, dude, the Big Ten seems to always do this to their teams. I mean, if you're top 10, top 5 in the Big Ten, for some reason you're going to play at 11 o'clock. And I'm just going, I don't get that.
It's
and
Fox.
Like, to me,
Fox. It's the Fox has a contract. For whatever reason, Fox is, the last couple of years that they've been heavy in football, they want their big game to be their noon game with noon Eastern. So they're all in on putting their premier game at noon. Not a fan of it.
Me neither.
But that's the direction they've gone. Big one in the SEC. You got number 17 Tennessee at number 11 Alabama. Alabama opened up as 9.5-point favorites. They're now 8.5-point favorites. We mentioned it in the opening. Alabama looked very gettable. They already lost to Texas, and then they've played back-to-back. Well, really, 3 of the last 4 games, really close games. They ended up pulling away from Ole Miss, winning by 2 touchdowns. They beat A&M 2 weeks ago by 6, and then last week beat Arkansas by 3. So they've had back-to-back one-possession games that could have went either way, and they host Tennessee. And I'd tell you the most underrated unit maybe in the country is this Tennessee defense. You hear all about the Tennessee offense, and Joe Milton, their quarterback's really underperformed. But this Tennessee defense, I think, is legit. I mean, they've really done some nice things. They're like ranked 11th in the country in total defense. I think that's a unit to watch in this matchup. Tennessee going to Alabama. Of course, Tennessee won last year for like the first time in forever. In this cigar rivalry game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Tennessee, other than South Carolina putting 20, they're holding all their opponents into the teens. 13, A&M 13, of course, South Carolina 20, UTSA 14. Excuse me, they lost to Florida. Florida put 29 on them, but then Austin P, of course, that kind of doesn't, really tell you anything, but they're still 13. So other than a win against South Carolina and a loss somehow against Florida, they're holding teams in the teens, and that's going to be something. Alabama, like we said, Nick Saban rarely goes undefeated. He's already got the loss against Texas. Luckily, this game's at home. Or Alabama, I think, might be a closer spread than that. This is another one I'm going to be keeping up with.
Yeah, I'm interested to see this one. Alabama has really struggled to run the ball unless Milroe breaks a big one. The running backs haven't been great because their offensive line isn't as good as it usually has been. I think this Tennessee team might be a little bit better once they found their groove. If Milton doesn't turn the football over, I think it'll be another tight one for Alabama. Can they squeak it out again? A big one in the ACC. You had a big one last week, North Carolina beating Miami. Now you have number 16 Duke at number 4 Florida State. Florida State's a 14-point favorite. Now Florida State might be the best team, one of the top. They're ranked 4th, so they got a pretty good path to the ACC championship. It could be a collision course between them and North Carolina. I don't know if Duke's getting enough credit, though. I think their quarterback, Riley Leonard's questionable, and we've seen him. He's already beat Clemson, took Notre Dame to the wire, and he actually sprained his ankle against Notre Dame. And he is questionable. That was 3 weeks ago. I think that's part of the reason why Duke's a 2-touchdown favorite. I know Leonard practiced last week and even did warm-ups, pregame warm-ups, but he did not play last week. Duke took care of NC State pretty handedly. So we'll see if Duke's quarterback plays, but they're a feisty team, man. They're another team that plays great defense. Florida State's that team. I mean, they just got so many weapons on offense. If they come to play, they're tough to stop. But this is it's in Tallahassee. It's a big one. Florida State trying to stay undefeated on the season and make the playoff.
Yeah, and coming off that 41-3 drumming of Syracuse, momentum going Florida State's way. And Duke, like you said, Riley Leonard gets hurt in the Notre Dame game. And then last week, without Riley Leonard, they put up 24 points against a not very good North Carolina State team. Definitely a different team without their NFL quarterback there, Daniel Jones 2.0. This one, like you said, I don't think Duke's getting enough credit, but if Riley Leonard doesn't play, I think Florida State's going to cover pretty handedly. Riley Leonard, I think, gives them a real good shot to win. And it's just one of those, when your guy's there, I mean, you know how it is. Like we played sport, your guy's there, everybody kind of rallies around. When your guy's not there, he's hurt, you don't think you can, it's like it just starts creeping in. And every mistake just gets bigger and bigger. And of course, we're not going to win. We don't have so-and-so, our guy's not in. We don't have our stud running back or quarterback or, point guard or center, whatever it is. So yeah, this one I think hinges on Riley Leonard playing.
Yeah, I agree. The last first ranked matchup is number 14 Utah that has one loss at number 18 USC, who just lost their first game last week against Notre Dame. USC favored, ping on the book. It's either 6.5 or 7. I think Utah plays pretty good defense. And I think Notre Dame might have gave a blueprint that maybe Utah can try to copy and play against USC. Caleb Williams had his first 3-interception game of his career. And I think, usually he's a playmaker. He makes things happen. He's on the run, move, the way he can maneuver his body and torque his hips and his torso to make some of the throws he makes is remarkable. And that's why he's going to be the first draft pick taken this year. But he's been playing hero ball, and that defense for USC is not good. Utah's offense without Cam Rising hasn't been great. But if Utah's defense can force Caleb Williams into some turnovers, they might have a chance. I expect Utah to replicate Notre Dame's defensive game plan. I just don't know if they can score enough points on offense, even though USC's defense is terrible.
Yeah, this is going to be a make or break game, I think, for the USC Trojans.
Yeah,
how does Caleb Williams, Lincoln Riley, and this Trojans team, how do they handle adversity? Are they going to start pointing fingers? Are they going to be able to rebound and go, hey, guys, one got away from us, let's shake it off, and, they'll get a big statement win here. Utah, like you said, without Cam Rising, leaning pretty heavily on the defense. And if Caleb Williams comes out and the pit machine, starts back up, this could get pretty ugly. But like I said, this is going to be a statement game for USC to come out and go, either we're going to fold, the season's over, then Caleb Williams can either come back or stay. Saw a deal where he said he makes more in college than he probably would in the NFL right now. So he's considering, not coming out depending on the team that's there to take him. I think this game's going to have a lot to do. Obviously, I think USC will be done 2 losses if they don't win this game. And Utah, it's another one. Utah will be done too.
It's an elimination game for the playoffs.
Elimination game. So,
but don't forget USC. That loss wasn't conference, so they're still playing for the Pac-12 championship.
Right.
And the Pac-12 is just, we talk about it every week. They're so good. It's the best conference in football. So kind of an elimination game for the playoff.
Yeah, Utah would be done. That'd be their second conference loss. First one was Oregon State. So,
and no word
USC.
No word on Cam Rising yet, whether he's playing or not. Every week, might be the week. So, I mean, he tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl in January. Yeah. And the 9 months is usually, actually, I know somebody who just, high school athlete tore ACL, and their hope is 9 months. That's a high school athlete playing. That's for softball. So football is a little bit more contact sport, obviously, but it's more of the being able to support your running and all that, and everything you got to do. So the new norm, it used to be a year minimum. Now it's, with technology, 8 or 9 months, but he's been out, this is 10 months now. And so, it depends on if he plays, and you got to factor in if he not just playing, but like, is he going to be at the level that he's been at? There's 7 games in now. So I don't know how much longer you go and see if he can play.
Yeah, because has he been practicing? And then again, your practice, you're obviously going to have the red jersey on him, don't touch and stuff.
Yeah,
And
he
so he
definitely.
probably hadn't been hit, hadn't seen, real, what I'll call a real live defense. It's probably been, maybe 90% at best, at
Yeah.
the very best. So yeah, like I said, and that may be another one too. That can be a real momentum breaker. We got our guy back, we're back. And all of a sudden Cam Rising's got a bunch of rust he's got to shake off, and the team just mentally goes, oh man, if he's not going to play, man, I thought everybody kind of, your quarterback especially is the most important position,
Yep.
maybe in all of sports. And when you got a guy like Cam Rising who you're expecting to come back and play at that same level, and all of a sudden he doesn't, it can take the rug out from underneath you. So yeah, Utah really needs to win this game. So this is another one. That's a 7 o'clock game, thankfully. So
Yep.
I'll be tuning into that as well.
Big game in the Pac-12. Let's move to our next segment, questions of the week. Get your questions in. You can email us, gridirongrindsports@gmail.com. Check out our website, gridirongrindsports.com. You can also hit us up on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Comment on one of our videos, and we'll pick the best questions. We usually do 2 questions on our college football podcast, 1 on our NFL podcast that comes out on Thursday. So we got 2 questions this week. Both of them, one's about Georgia, but both of them kind of talk about the playoff a little bit. So we'll get to the first one for you, Jimmy. I'll let you address it first. This one is from Evan from Flower Mound, Texas, via Twitter. And the question is, how does the injury to Brock Bowers, the tight end for Georgia, impact the Georgia Bulldogs moving forward? A lot of people say, regardless of position, Brock Bowers is the best player in college football. He sprained his ankle last week against Vanderbilt, and he had a surgery on Sunday, and he's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. So how does that affect Georgia moving forward? And if they lose a game, could the SEC be held out of the college football playoff?
So Brock Bowers is the leading receiver at Georgia. 567 receiving yards on 41 catches, excuse me, and 4 touchdowns. So not having him in there, breaking in a new quarterback, that's a huge loss. You lose your tight end at any level. That's usually the quarterback safety blankets, that and the the running back in the flat type deal. And so you don't have a guy, the best tight end in the nation, probably the last 2 years. You lose that guy, and that's going to be you're going to have to see what you got behind him. Some teams, Iowa, I mean, golly, what they had Hawkinson and Fant on the same team, so both first-round tight ends. So Georgia may have a guy back there, they're just stashing away. They may have a stable. I don't know, but we're going to find out. And to the second part, so I guess the first part, it's a big blow to Georgia. Georgia's going to have to adapt without him. He's a playmaking tight end, and his loss will be noticeable. So now it'll be, can the running game, can the other receivers, can the backup tight end kind of fill the role, and the defense step up and kind of make up for his absence? And for the second part, if they lose a game, could they be held out?
Well, could the whole SEC be held out? Georgia's the only undefeated team left in the SEC.
I think it's possible. I mean, depends on how they're going to value, like the losses. Is one loss? Are we going to have a one-loss team? How's the rest of the SEC shape up? We know the Pac-12, best conference in football this year. And are their one-loss teams going to have a better resume, pass the eye test better than, let's say, Georgia? Because Georgia goes on to win the SEC championship. I mean,
assuming they have one loss,
hard to keep.
Yeah, because if Georgia goes undefeated, they're in. But if they have one loss against a Pac-12,
that'll be interesting to see. That's where you'll see the campaigning that Dabo and Saban have been doing the last couple of years for their teams, and you'll see Kirby Smart start to campaign against the other one-loss teams in the country. But if they lose and go on to win the SEC championship game, I think they're in. Of course, I think it depends on who they play on the other side. Right now, I guess it'd be Alabama. So
here's their schedule coming up. They have a bye this week. So here's who they're going to be playing without Brock Bowers, who's been basically their whole offense, but definitely their whole passing game. So they got a bye. Then they have a rivalry game with Florida. And then they host Missouri, who Missouri has only got the one loss to LSU. Then they play Ole Miss. Ole Miss has the one loss to Alabama, and then at Tennessee. So they play Florida and then 3 top 20 teams in the country, all potentially without their best player in Brock Bowers. Whew. This could be the first time in a long time Georgia fans might be sweating in the regular season. It definitely affects them. We'll see what happens. I mean, they get in a shootout or something with Missouri, the way Brady Cook's throwing the football, or Ole Miss. We know what they can do. That Tennessee defense, and it's going to be at Tennessee. Tennessee knocked off Alabama last year at home. What if they can knock off Georgia at home? I'm almost saying they might lose one of those games. And then you come into let's say Georgia does lose a game and Alabama has one loss, maybe 2, but let's just say it's Alabama, Georgia in the SEC championship. Both have one loss, and Alabama has that one loss. And depending on what happens around the country, yes, the SEC could be left out. Because let's say a scenario, a Pac-12 champ, Washington or Oregon. Let's say Oregon comes back, wins the Pac-12. So Oregon has one loss, Washington has one loss, but Oregon beat them. And then let's say Texas comes back, beats Oklahoma. They both have one loss. Texas just won the Big 12. Alabama were to beat Georgia. Alabama has one loss, but Texas beat them. And then you have Michigan or Ohio State. One of them's undefeated, and the other one has a loss. And then you have the ACC. You could have Florida State, North Carolina. One of them could have a win, one loss. One of them could be undefeated. I don't know if the SEC would have the resume to get in that circumstance. I really don't.
You're right. I mean, it's going to be hard to put them in over some of those Pac-12 teams, like you said, Oregon, Washington.
If Oregon or Washington, win the Pac-12 with one loss, they're in my opinion. Best conference.
I think so too.
One loss, they're in.
Especially the way the Pac-12's gone this year. I mean, it's going to be going away from Georgia, going to just the SEC as a whole. The SEC's best chance now, still is Georgia. You need Georgia to win the SEC. You can't have, unless you've got a bunch of teams that lose in front of Alabama, you can't have Alabama go in and upset Georgia in the SEC if you hope to get a team in the playoff. Although it also depends on how much the committee is going to value the winning the SEC this year when it's kind of down versus the runner-up in the Pac-12. Or maybe, Michigan, Ohio State, that loser. And then, like you said, Texas OU. I mean, it's more grounds for the larger playoff.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah. And that kind of goes into our next question.
It's into our next question.
This is the first, I will say it's the first year. It's definitely since the playoffs started in 2014 that the SEC, it's not a lock that they're getting a team in. I mean, they've gotten 2 teams in on a couple occasions, but they've had a team in every year. But it could be, I think they're the only conference that have participated in the playoff every year. I think the Big Ten was held out 1 year. So I don't know. That would be something crazy if the SEC doesn't make the playoff. But thanks for the question, Evan from Flower Mound.
Yeah, Evan, and real quick, Oscar Delp is Brock Bowers' backup, 6'5", 245, sophomore. He's 13 receptions, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns this year. Longest receptions, 41 yards. So we'll see how good Oscar Delp is in Brock Bowers' absent. Like you said, brings us to our next question. Trey, this one's from you. This is from Tommy from Texarkana, Texas, Triple T here. Tommy from Texarkana. He says, with the playoff expanding to 12 teams next year, do y'all prefer the current format of 4 teams, an 8-team format, or the new 12-team format?
This is one, we've only seen the 4-team. We'll never see an 8-team because we're jumping straight to 12. I've heard a lot of people argue against that are diehard college football fans. They've argued against the 12-team format because the best thing about college football is that every week means something. Like in the NFL, these first couple, you can make the playoffs with 5, 6, 7 losses. Okay, so losing a couple of games is not the end of the world. But in college football, in the BCS when it was 2, and now with the 4 team, yeah, if you're a good team, you can lose 1, but you can't lose 2. No 2-loss team has ever made the playoff. And a lot of people have argued the 12-team format will dilute the regular season product. I do believe college football, where it stands out compared to all other sports, pro and collegiate, is that college football regular season means the most. It's every week, every Saturday matters. And I think with a 14 playoff, you get that for sure. Every Saturday still matters.
Mm-hmm.
That's yet to be seen on the 12 team. I think I'm going to like the 12-team playoff, but I do acknowledge that there's going to be, some teams that might get in with a 3 losses. And, that first loss, like for instance, the Texas-Oklahoma situation this year. All right, Texas lost that one. It would sting because you don't want to lose to Oklahoma, but you're like, okay, Texas could still make the playoff. 1 loss. Now Texas, like, to even have a chance, they got to win out and avenge that loss to Oklahoma. So I acknowledge that, and I also acknowledge you're going to have some matchups in the first round of the 12 team some years where it's going to be lopsided. You're going to get you could have like this year, you could have a 1-loss Oregon playing Air Force. I don't know if we really need to see that. That could happen in a 12-team format.
And I think it should.
I think it should. That goes to the deserving versus the best. And I think there's a fine line, because if you deserve it, you should get in. Because who are we to say? I mean, Vegas puts out lines, but the favorite doesn't always win. Who are we to say who's the best when they haven't played each other, or they haven't? The schedules are not weighted equally. Recruiting is not weighted equally. So who are we to say? Yeah, we can watch the games and say who we think's the best, but at the same time, some of these teams, they deserved it. Like UCF, we'd never have to speculate. They claim a fake national championship, but if they were in the playoff, we'd never have to speculate whether they were good enough or not. So I think it's for the deserving. Absolutely. I think I'm going to like the 12-team playoff because, one, it gives a group of teams to compete for it. Like, we're going to have 20 plus teams vying for it in November that have a chance to get in the top 12. Whereas now, November, there's probably going to be less than 10 trying to get to the 4. And some guys, I don't like the opting out early, and some guys not even finishing the season because, we're not going to make the national championship. We can't win conference. So I'm going to set out. I'm hurt. Ohio State had a receiver last year that did that, and they ended up making the playoff. So I don't like that. Nick Saban says it will prevent people from setting out like bowl games, because if you got a chance to win a national championship, most of them are going to continue to play, and they're not going to set out those bowl games. So I think I agree with Nick Saban when he said that it gives more teams and more players something to play for. So, we'll wait and see, but I think I'm going to like the 12. I think it has more pros and cons, but I do agree. The best thing about college football is the regular season, and every Saturday matters. So I hope that continues with the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I'd rather see an 8-team. Give me the Power 5 conference winners and 3 at-large bids. I think that would be fine. Your only controversy really comes to 3 at-large bids. I mean, basketball's got it down. If you make the conference tournament as the last seed and you somehow go through and win, I mean, you're automatic bid. So I'm sitting here going, okay, yeah, one year we might have, North Carolina State upsets Clemson in the ACC championship game somehow because one of their division, their half of the division was just terrible. Well, they won it, So I personally think 8. But going to 12, like you said, we may have Air Force play so-and-so. I always go back to the Sugar Bowl, Georgia versus Hawaii. Oh man, Hawaii's going to put up all these points and we're the big dogs. And this is what I feel like would happen with UCF. They're going to bark loud. Then they got in the ring with a real contender and lost 41-10.
Yeah,
I think that's what would happen. And that's why I say I think they ought to. You know what? If Air Force is undefeated and you know what? Put them in there. Because it's going to do 2 things. One, if they deserve to be there, they're going to end up beating somebody they quote shouldn't. And if they don't, they're going to get the floor wiped with them, and it'll put it to rest. So I personally am like, let's go it. Let's see every David versus Goliath we can. and let's see how many times David wins. So
Yeah,
I'm all
because
for it.
it's double-edged sword because then
Yep.
like Cincinnati made the 14 2 years ago and they got
Mhm.
wiped by Alabama.
Yeah.
But then people also say, well, like TCU made it to the national championship last year. But
Mhm.
if you have a 12-team playoff, they would not have made the national championship because they might have had to play Georgia in the second round, instead of
Mhm.
playing them in the championship round. And that game would have happened, so we wouldn't have had a national championship. So it could be it's going to have pros and cons. Like you might not have any more Cinderellas make the national championship, but that was the only time that's ever happened. I mean,
Right.
it's always been the big dogs, and so and a lot of
Mhm.
times saying, well, in previous years, you've had a group of just dominant elite teams, and it wouldn't matter how many teams are in the playoff. Those
Mhm.
guys are, they're going to rise to the top. But this year is the perfect example when we got a multitude of teams who could win the national championship and compete
Yeah,
for it. This would be the perfect year for a 12-team playoff. So
I agree.
we'll see how it turns out. Thanks for the question, Tommy from Texarkana, Texas. Again, get your questions in. Gridiron Grind Sports at gmail.com. GridironGrindSports.com is our website. Or comment on one of our videos or hit us up on Twitter or Instagram, and we'll take your questions every week and get to those. So, all right, that brings us to our final segment of the show, our favorite segment every week. It's our bets. We got our bets for
Mm.
was this week 8 now? Week 8. And we talk about it every week. We're hot in the NFL. In the NFL, we went combined 5-1 last week. But in college, we went 3-3. So not terrible on the week, but our overall record, so I was 2-1 last week. Jimmy 1-2. I'm 13-13 on the year. Jimmy 14-18. So
Mm.
just gotta have a hot week. 1 week. All it takes, Jimmy, is one hot week here,
Right.
and we're in
One
the money.
week, and this might be it.
This could be it. So I got 4 ready to rock and roll.
I got
And
4.
the first one I have actually starts tonight. Wednesday night game. And this is going to
Mhm.
sound crazy, but sometimes when you're 500, we're gonna take a chance. It's either gonna be great or we're gonna miss it. But I'm gonna take a
Let's hear
chance
it.
here, and this is wild. Wednesday night game, we have Sam Houston State hosting
Mhm.
Florida International. Sam Houston State at home, favored by 5 points. Now, Sam Houston State is 0-6 on the year. This is their first
Mhm.
year in the FBS. They're hosting Florida International, but somehow the Bearcats, who are 0-6, are favored at home. You know, that stands out to me. How is a team that is winless favored by a touchdown to FIU is a 3-4 on the season? But then you dig a little deeper. Florida International's 3 wins were against Cupcakes. Florida International's also winless in conference play. So I think this is a perfect spot for Sam Houston. And you look at all their games, they've been competitive against everybody. I mean, the first game of the season, BYU, they only lost by 14, and that one was close late. The only game they really weren't competitive was against Houston at Houston, second week of the season, but that's a Power 5 team. All the
That's
other
basically a rivalry game too.
all the other non-Power 5 teams, they've been right there and had a chance, been into overtime with Jacksonville State. I like this spot for the Bearcats tonight, -5 at home against Florida International. The Sam Houston State defense, pretty good. I mean, they're not bad. Maybe the best defense for an 0-6 team in the history of football. They play sound defense. They have a slow pace offense, so that keeps them in a lot of games. I just feel like this might be the night Sam Houston gets their first win as an FBS program. So I'm taking the Sam Houston State Bearcats tonight, -5 at home, hosting Florida International.
Man, I like that. I looked at the over under in that
It's like
because
41
of
or
what you
something.
said. Yeah, it's 41 and FIU is not very good. And so, but I decided against it, but I like it. I like what you said. I think that sounds like a winner. To me, my first bet is one of the big games of the weekend we talked about earlier. Penn State, Ohio State. Give me Penn State +4 in this one. Penn State's allowing less than 200 a game. Most important about that less than 200 yards a game is they're only allowing 72 yards on the ground. And if Ohio State can't get Henderson going, I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on McCord. And again, they are lucky to have beaten Notre Dame
Yep.
Like I said, because Notre Dame forgot it takes 11 to play. And I think Penn State covers. I also think Penn State wins this game. I think, like you said, this is going to be one of those games where we'll find out how good Penn State is. And my opinion, I think we're going to find out that they're going to beat Ohio State. So give me Penn State +4 over the Ohio State Buckeyes.
All right, Jimmy going with the Nittany Lions. I'm going to stay in the Big Ten. I'm going to take the Wisconsin Badgers, favored by 2.5 at Illinois. Now, I was against Illinois last week, and man, they came up. Maryland was favored by 14. Yeah. Illinois, I watched that whole game. Illinois outplayed them. I couldn't believe it because Illinois has been terrible all year. And Maryland had their first loss the week before against Ohio State. Maryland just laid an egg. Illinois played their best game of the season, won on a last-second field goal. But Wisconsin got stuffed last week against Iowa. Couldn't do anything against Iowa. Of course, Iowa, best defense in the country, one of the worst offenses in the country. But I think Wisconsin's a better team. I think you're getting a good number because Illinois won on the road. Wisconsin lost at home last week. I think Wisconsin's a better team. I just don't believe Illinois can play like that 2 weeks in a row. Haven't done it all year. So first game they even look competent. I think Wisconsin bounces back, even though it's in Illinois, but it's 2.5. I like the Badgers to cover and win the game. Wisconsin -2.5.
A little bit of revenge, rivalry, whatever you want to call it. Bielema going back.
It's true.
I say
Bielema
at home against his old team. So, but yeah, I think just at the end of the day, Wisconsin's that much better than Illinois. So I like it. I'm going to stay another former Brett Bielema team. Mississippi State versus the Arkansas Razorbacks. Give me Arkansas -6.
Love it.
Mississippi State's not good. Arkansas is not really good either, but it's in Fayetteville, and I think Arkansas on paper is the better team by double digits. Again, like we said, Hogs coming off that emotional 3-point loss to Bama. And this is one Arkansas needs to win to stay on track for a bowl. So yeah, I think Arkansas takes care of business and puts Mississippi State away in Fayetteville in front of a crowd. Good crowd's gonna be rocking, and give me the Hogs -6.
I love this bet. This was on my short list. I didn't pull the trigger, but I really like it. I think Arkansas is better than the record. I think they've played. I mean, the last couple of weeks they've played Bama, A&M, Ole Miss. It's just been a gauntlet of a schedule for Arkansas, and they've lost, I think, 4 in a row. And they lost. We talked about that the other day. I still am shocked how they lost at home to BYU. But I think
Arkansas 5 in a row, Trey.
5 in a row. Sorry, 5 in a row. Who was the one I'm missing?
5 in a row.
It was BYU,
LSU,
Ole Miss,
A&M,
Arkansas,
Alabama.
Alabama.
All of them except for
BYU.
A&M.
Oh,
all of them except for A&M were one possession games.
And A&M very well might have. I mean, it was for a lot of the game was a 1 possession game.
Yeah, so that's another reason I think. Well, I think we're, like you said, I think we're better than the record indicates.
For sure. So I like that bet. That's a good bet. I think that's a winner. Getting less than a touchdown at home, and you've played well, like you said, 1 possession. Yeah. But then the A&M one might as well have been a 1 possession game. I like Arkansas there. I think it's a good pick. My third bet, I'm going to go to the Big 12. Oklahoma State, West Virginia. Give me the over 50 points. Both teams are averaging. So Oklahoma State's averaging 32 points a game. West Virginia is averaging 28 points per game. So if they just do their average offense, the over hits. And then both teams, Oklahoma State's giving up 25 and West Virginia's giving up 27. So West Virginia's basically giving up and scoring 28. I think the number's just a little too low. I mean, this still is the Big 12. It's not as high-powered offense as it used to be. But Oklahoma State, one thing they've done, first couple of weeks, they rotated quarterbacks like crazy. Well, the last 2 weeks, they've stuck with one quarterback, Alan Bowman, and they won against Kansas State. Then last week, they upset Kansas. They scored 39 points last week against Kansas. They scored 32, I think, the week before against Kansas State. So ever since they've stuck with Bowman, they've scored over 30 both weeks. If the team gets to 30, I think that's a lock to hit because I think I can see this game being like a 31-28. The spread's West Virginia 3.5. I like this bet to cover. 50 is low total. So that's 7 touchdowns and a field goal. So you need basically each team to score 4 possessions. I like this bet. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, over 50.
I like it, man. That was on my short list as well, and I may take it come game day and see if it moves a little bit. If it starts to go up, I'm pull the trigger on it. Staying in the SEC for me, Ole Miss and Auburn. Give me Ole Miss minus 6.5. Auburn's not good on offense. Their quarterback Thorne is the leading passer, obviously, and rusher. It's never really a good sign unless you have a Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, type deal. And even then, you really don't want those guys being the leading rusher because you lose 2 positions at once if something was to happen. And I think it's in Auburn, Jordan Hare Stadium. I don't think that matters. Hugh Freeze might be on the hot list or on the hot seat already in Auburn. And I think Ole Miss has an easy win here. Again, another Hugh Freeze used to be the old coach at Ole Miss, but I think Kiffin and Ole Miss come in there and just roll them. So give me Ole Miss minus 6.5 on the road at Auburn.
I like that. Ole Miss definitely the better team. And like you said, Auburn has really only been in conference play decent one game against, and that was against Georgia. But people forget that's a rivalry game. I mean, Auburn has the 2 hardest rivals there is. Georgia, they play Georgia every year, and they play Alabama every year. And so people forget Auburn. Georgia's a rivalry game, and that's why that game was close. Outside of that, they haven't been very competitive in the SEC. So I like Ole Miss. I agree with you. Ole Miss wins that game. All right, my last one. I'm taking a flyer here. Duke at Florida State. Give me Duke plus 14. I really believe, just reading the articles, I believe the quarterback for Duke, Riley Leonard, who is a warrior, I believe he's going to play. I really believe that. And I think if it leaks, because press conference, Mike Elko, coach for Duke, said he's day-to-day questionable, game time decision. Of course, everybody says that. He doesn't want to leak it out. I think they said he practiced last week and went through warm-ups. I think he's going to practice again. I think he's going to play. And if it leaks out that he's playing, that's going to sneak under 14. So I think if you go ahead and get it now, Duke plus 14, and then he plays, Duke's defense is too good to be a 2-touchdown underdog to anybody in the conference. I understand Florida State's really good. Florida State's probably the best team in the ACC. I mean, you saw Duke almost beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame had to convert a 4th and 18 in the final seconds and then score a touchdown to beat Duke. I think Duke's defense is legit. I think they give Florida State problems. I do believe Riley Leonard plays. If he doesn't, I still think Duke's defense can keep them within 2 touchdowns. So give me the Duke Blue Devils plus 14 at Florida State.
It's exciting. I love having action on those type of games. That's why I took Penn State, Ohio State. Just another reason to stay tuned in and locked into these big games every weekend. For my last one, kind of basically, same reason you had West Virginia, Oklahoma State. I mean, James Madison at Marshall over 50. James Madison undefeated, averaging over 30 a game. Marshall 4-2, averaging over 30 a game. All you got to do is hit your average over 50. We're there already with each team. So kind of short and sweet there. James Madison and Marshall over 50.
That's a sneaky, very good game. Marshall is a good football team. James Madison only been at the FBS level 2 or 3 seasons.
That is a Thursday game, by the way.
Thursday game.
Thursday game.
Sunbelt, and a very competitive Sunbelt. Love watching Sunbelt Thursday night games. I like that. I might take that one as well. I'll look into it. James Madison, Marshall, over 50. So here's our Gridiron Grind recap of our bets, each with 4 bets. Start with Jimmy. Thursday night game, he's got James Madison, Marshall, over 50. Then for 3 Saturday games, he's got Penn State plus 4, Arkansas minus 6, Ole Miss minus 6.5. Myself, I have a Wednesday night game, Sam Houston State minus 5. Then on Saturday, I got 3, Wisconsin minus 2.5, Oklahoma State, West Virginia over 50, and Duke plus 14. There's 8 bets for you. 3 and 3 last week combined. looking to have a winning week, and this could be the week.
Got to get it figured out, and I think we're on track. I like these. Of course, I say that every week, but
It's true.
eventually, they
Eventually
talk
we're
about
gonna be
that
right.
blind squirrel. They talk about that blind squirrel, man, and he's getting hungry. So
We might be finding nuts this week, Jimmy.
right, he's zeroing in on it. So
I like it. That's our college football podcast. Comes out on Apple Podcasts and YouTube Wednesdays, usually around noon. Be sure to join us on Thursday. It's our Cowboys NFL pod, and we have something to talk about. We got a question on our thoughts about have you seen the Chargers fan? And then there was stories that leaked whether she was real or fake. Have you heard
she
that?
was AI or what?
That she was a paid actress.
Mm.
So we had a question that thought what we thought. But then she can't actually, the Pat McAfee show interviewed her earlier, I think Tuesday, actually got on an interview, and she said no, she wasn't paid. So of course she could have been lying. I don't know. But she was they loved showing her. And so somebody asked us a question about if we thought she was a paid actress or she was a real fan. So we'll talk about that tomorrow on our Cowboys NFL podcast. Cowboys going into the bye. So join us there on Thursday. Usually comes out around noon. Again, Apple Podcasts and YouTube. But check out gridirongrindsports.com. Jimmy G's Big Three comes out every week. Coffee with Creta. I'm going to have a blog come out later this week, kind of resetting the college football landscape of my predictions before the season. Then I made predictions 3 weeks in. I'll see where those stand and make some halfway point, maybe adjust some of those predictions and see what I think. So I have a blog come out, and then of course my Coffee with Creta bets come out on Saturday morning. So gridirongrindsports.com is the place to be for that. Jimmy, have a great weekend. What's your weekend plans?
And I'm gonna go.
Oh, you're
Gonna
going
watch
away.
some football.
Yeah.
I'm going to Nashville for a
Nice
surprise birthday party for a buddy's wife. I think they're gonna have me jump out of the cake. We'll see. and we'll try to catch the Rangers game tomorrow. Baseball.
Absolutely. Well, later
2-0
tonight.
coming
Later
back
tonight,
home.
yeah.
So.
Later tonight and Thursday. Dude, I got my last volleyball.
Yeah, sorry, I'm lost.
Yes.
So I'm pretty excited about it, man.
The Rangers, yes.
That would have been a fantastic preseason bet right there. Rangers in the ALCS. I think they probably have to rename the MGM the JGM. Try to place that bet. But excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Rangers. I got my daughter, her last volleyball Saturday, but it's a tournament. So I will be engaged in a first and second grade into the season tournament. I'll be doing that all day. We come in as the 2 seed. So it could be a long day, obviously favored to go to the championship.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, our first game's at 9 a.m. I think the championship's at like 6 or 7. So your boy could be doing some first, second grade volleyball all day Saturday on a football Saturday. But
well, you ought to see if you can get some lines going, see if you can make some money while you're there.
See if I can take some action.
See if you can get anyone to take you up on it.
Yeah, you
never know.
The first game's gonna be sneaky. We play a team. I think their best player hadn't played, and that's why they had a lower seeding. She had some whatever rumors are. She's gonna be here for the tournament. So I think you get by the first game. We set up to go a couple rounds before we play the number 1 seed, and then see how that one goes. But hopefully, my daughter's sake, I'm there all day. We make it to the championship and see how it goes. But so I don't know what I'm going to do football wise. I don't know if I'm
bring your iPad and a charger.
I'm going to bring my iPad. So I'm thinking about the Longhorns play at 3. Now the night games, I can probably catch the night games, but I'm contemplating whether I bring the iPad and watch the Longhorns game at 3, but I'd also have a volleyball game going on. Or if I just record it, turn my phone off, watch it at home at night when I get home. It's always hard to do. I'd have to.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong either way.
Too many people will chirp me on my phone. I mean, my family's Longhorns, and if we're losing, I will get chirped on the phone. So I have to I'd have to turn my phone completely off.
Yep.
And so I'm going to make a decision on that. See what I do. It's hard. It's so hard to do that though. Knowing the game's on and waiting a couple hours, the game would be over by the time I got home.
And then you got to hope that you go in and don't have, like, you don't see Sports Center.
Well,
you
that's
have to leave
thing.
your phone off till almost through the entire game.
Through the end of the whole game, I'd have to turn my phone off at 3:00 and wouldn't be able to turn it on until after I finished the game. But in my man cave, I have a 3 TV setup in my man cave. The problem, and I've learned this, like when I've recorded a game, I might have the recorded game on the middle TV and then the 2 live night games on. But the problem is the game would be over and you might catch a scroller at the bottom telling you the final score. So it really stinks. You either have to not watch the live games at all and just watch the recorded game, or record the 3 games that you want to watch and watch them all recorded at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Or bring your iPad and a charger, and
or I'll just bring my iPad and watch it. It's so weird trying to do that though, because if it's a close game, I did it a couple weeks ago against Kansas game, and Texas-Kansas was close the first half, and I'm like, yelling out stuff on my iPad. People are looking at me like, this guy's intense for a 1st and 2nd grade girls volleyball game.
You remember coming to America when Eddie Murphy's at the basketball game and that girl's kind of grabbing and rubbing on his leg and he doesn't like it. And he just stands up and goes, yes, yes. And they're like, what are you doing, man? It's halftime. And he looks around. He's like, oh, yeah, this is my favorite part of the game. So, I could see you go like, oh, what are we doing? And it's like, buddy, time out. What do you mean? What's going on? So, yeah. It's definitely something I don't think you can go wrong either way. If it's me, I'm trying to watch it live so I don't have to be closed off for 8 hours.
The obstacles that dads go through when you have kids that are old enough to be in things. It's the obstacles we fight every weekend trying to figure it out. Usually it's just one game. Sometimes I'll have a cheerleading game, then a volleyball game, but then I'm done. But it's a tournament, end of the season tournament. I mean, we could play 6 games, 7 games. So, it's price being a dad.
Right.
But, rooting on the 1st, 2nd grade Lady Bulldogs going for that trophy. So hopefully we get that done and get the win. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for checking us out on our Gridiron Grind YouTube page and our Apple Podcast page, also gridirongrindsports.com. Thanks for joining us. Let's win all of our bets this week. We'll see you with a football, college, or NFL Dallas Cowboys pod tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, Jimmy. We'll see you, buddy. Have a great weekend.
You too, buddy. Go Hogs.